So our job really is to be an enabler for the company and to enable the company to be data-driven. There's a lot of things that make that very difficult. You can say data is developed and it's created all over the place, but how can you create a model such that the data is stitched together, it's curated, it's governed, it's the right data, it's correct, and then you can create mechanisms to be able to either better communicate with your customers, engage the customers, or better just understand your business. And we've done that with this data-driven operating model. The data-driven operating model has really allowed us to look across all of the silos that we had 4 or 5 years ago across our organization that was really as a result of kind of going to the cloud, going to subscription, and rationalize that together, create a single view of the customer. That single view of the customer, though, is based on very strong governance techniques and also a unified data architecture. Combined with that, we were able to take sort of what I call an outside-in approach of creating customer journeys. And the customer journey and the customer journey steps, which are for consumer-based business, when you think about the Photoshop and the InDesign and the Illustrator, discover, try, buy, use, and renew. And across every one of those steps, we actually went to each and assigned owners and organizations to own those different KPIs within that journey step, and then to create calls to action. And that sort of outside-in approach allowed us to create data sets and analytical experiences that we now use to run the entirety of our digital media business. And it's been really transformational from a number of different points. Number one, when we actually run the business, when we close the business every week, there's a group of over 100 people that get together and they actually look at this single source of truth analytical experience, journey step by journey step, and they understand what's happening in that market. Did our annual recurring revenue go up or down? What was traffic? What were the ads? What were the promotions? How? And they basically use that to turn the knobs on the business. And then they expect to see results, different results from what they're doing the following week. So they do that on a week in, week out basis. Further, the customer journey steps have really ingrained a culture change across the business, not only just of being data driven, but actually the vocabulary. We actually have meetings now on buy, on discover, on use. Engagement now is such a critical part of our business because of the subscription model, and this focus and this vocabulary has really permeated throughout Adobe. If you think about it, when there's 5 or 6 or 7 data silos all crunching the same data in 80% the same way, but the 20% that's different causes really big variations. So the operational efficiencies come, number one, we're reporting the same metrics up to management in the same way. There's no question about what that metric is. Number two, you don't have all this different database operations going on, so absolutely cost savings from there as well. But really the true value is how we run that business. So as an example, the way we do ad spend is radically changed. The way we do targeting and testing is radically changed because we now have a purview of every product across every geography, across every route to market. And when you make those decisions now, you actually see how did the annual recurring revenue take place for those customers over time. Same thing when we do targeting, A/B targeting. We now have an understanding of not just what that switch was, A, B, what was the result you were targeting, were you looking for, but actually what happens with those customers over a longitudinal way. And it's just been very, very revolutionary from that point of view. Further, we've kind of taken this whole data-driven operating model and created a playbook. And this didn't happen when we created it, it happened after we actually did it, and we said, wow, there's a lot of reusability here, not just from a systems and a capabilities perspective like platforms, governance, and data architecture, but really from the methodology. The methodology really allows us to have a kind of this inside-out approach of understanding all of your data assets, categorizing them, creating a database that has the lowest level of granularity, yet curated, ready for analytics. Number one, then number two, and use all these governance aspects about who owns the data, what's the lineage, what's the data quality characteristics, what's the actual definition. Cross-org definition is a harder problem than one would think. And then you combine that with that top-down approach, which is customer journey steps, assigned organizations and processes, and that yields actionable results. And we're actually taking that model and rolling it out to other parts of our business, even internal organizations in finance as an example, and procure to pay, or other areas where kind of the bottom-up, top-down, focusing on analytical results and KPIs or even personalization needs, and while we're inside out focusing on the data that's created and how it can be used in multiple ways. The last part about how it's changed is really the product management aspect of it. We treat the data as a product. We are an internal team. Our customers are all largely internal, although the data we create personalizes real-time experiences within the products. So we actually have and talk to what we develop at Adobe and the data we create as having different product characteristics. So our product is really about the actual data set. So as an example, our consumer data set is a product, and the analytical experiences that go along with it. And the reason we have to treat it that way is because it goes across probably almost a dozen different stakeholders. And when we get one request to do something from one, it's really not that request, while interesting, is how do we build and expand the core. The other thing we've done that's been pretty interesting is, we service every single department, every single organization across Adobe with data. But we do that in some cases what I call full serve. And full serve is where we create the data and we create the last mile visualization experiences. We also have a lot of customers where we have self-serve. We create the data, they create the visual, they do the BI, they do the other data wrangling. And we've introduced a third step over the past year that we call co-development. And that's where we really open source the data. So now the data is available for others to bring their engineers or third parties, whatever the case may be, to come into our environment and actually build data assets and expand the nucleus of what we call our unified data architecture. So having a product approach to what we're building allows us to build once and serve many and create really a set of capabilities that is really very impactful. We are spending less and less time creating data sets and visualizations and more time creating capabilities that will actually enable the entirety of the organization.